Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
Good day, grade 8 learners. Welcome to the Natural Sciences lesson. My name is Terele Tere, and this program is proudly brought to you by the Howden Department of Education. And then our knowledge area, grade 8, is life and living. Let's look at our topic. We are looking at interactions and interdependence within the environment. And we are going to be focusing on the subtopic, ecosystems and feeding relationships. Right. Let's check our lesson objectives. Remember, with the lesson objectives, this is a measure of what you are supposed to have grasped at the end of this lesson. Let's check the objectives. You must identify the 4 different levels of interactions between living organisms. And then we're also going to describe an ecosystem. We're going to state the difference between biotic and abiotic ecosystems. And then we are going to explain the relationship between the biotic factors and abiotic factors in an ecosystem. And then we'll also describe the feeding relationships. Then we classify organisms into their respective feeding groups. All right, and we get all this from the CAPS document, page 36. And then pre-knowledge. What is pre-knowledge? This is prior knowledge. This is the knowledge that you already have, grade 8. Remember, when you're in grade 5 and when you're in grade 6, you did the concept of an ecosystem and feeding relationships. And then in grade 7, we did biosphere, biodiversity and sexual reproduction in angiosperm, including sections on pollination. And then we've got a baseline activity. When we're looking at the baseline activity, these are the questions on the topics that we've already covered. Remember, last time we did photosynthesis, all right? Therefore, we've got questions on photosynthesis. We've got questions so that you remember what we did, all right? We want to recap. Question number 1 says, define photosynthesis. It carries 2 marks. And then question number 2, what is the function of chlorophyll in a plant? 1 mark. And then what are the requirements and products of photosynthesis? 5 marks. I'll give you 5 minutes to answer the questions. All right, grade 8, hope you are done writing the activity. And then we've got our WhatsApp number, which is 079-578-2908. Please make sure you just take a picture of your work that you have done and send us on 079-578-2908 so that we see how you answered the questions. Okay. Now let's solve the activity together. All right, you're going to mark your own work. The first question says define photosynthesis. When we are defining photosynthesis, remember what we said about photosynthesis. We said there is the ultimate source of energy is needed, that is the sunlight, and then carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is also needed, water from the soil is also needed, so that the plants will produce their food, right? And then there are products, okay? The products are the oxygen and what? And sugars. When we're talking about the sugars, we're talking about food, we're talking about glucose. And what is glucose? Glucose is a simple sugar. All right. When we're talking about photosynthesis, this is a process whereby plants use the light energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil to produce food in the form of glucose and oxygen. All right. And then these are the products. And then what is the function of chlorophyll in a plant? When we're looking at this term chlorophyll, what does it mean, chlorophyll? It is to capture light energy and convert it to chemical potential energy. And then what are the requirements and products of photosynthesis? What is required for photosynthesis to take place? We need the what? The sunlight. You also need carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Also need water. All right. And then what about chlorophyll? Chlorophyll will capture the light energy and convert it to what? To chemical potential energy. And then what about the products? When we're talking about the products, we are talking about what we're going to get from this process. We are going to get glucose and oxygen as well. And then what is glucose? Glucose is a simple sugar. Therefore, it is food that we need. All right? And then what about oxygen? Oxygen, we inhale oxygen because it is needed for respiration. It is needed for the release of energy from food, right? Because we need energy. As it is now, we ate something in the morning. That's why we are so energetic. That's why we are learning. That's why we are understanding, all right? And even when we do different activities, for example, if we want to go for sports, we run, we jump, we do different activities, it is because we've got energy. We need energy to do things. All right, let's move on. Then let's look at terminology. Terminology, these are the terms that you need to know, grade 8. All right, it starts from now. You need to define the terms. When you define the terms in your exams, you are going to come across these terms which you are supposed to define. From now up to grade 12, you will be defining terms, and these are just giving marks, right? Make sure you pay particular attention to them and you understand them. If you don't understand, make sure you ask. All right. Remember, you ask through WhatsApp text. You don't do a voice note, don't call, but just text us. The number again is 079 578 2908. Let's look at our terminology. We've got ecosystem. What is ecosystem? These are all living and non-living things in an environment and the different ways in which they interact with each other. This is an ecosystem, right? When we're talking about living things and non-living things and the way they interact, for example, if we look at water, it is abiotic, it is non-living. And then when we look at fish, they are living organisms, all right? Therefore, these interact. They need each other. All right? The fish will survive in water. Therefore, the fish needs what? Water. Therefore, the living and the non-living interact together. Okay. And then let's look at population. When we're looking at population, this is a group of the same species living in the same ecosystem. For example, if we look at elephants, it will be a population because it is a group of animals of the same species living in the same environment. Therefore, we call it a population. Same species, population. All right. And then let's look at biosphere. These are different ecosystems on Earth. All right. Biosphere, these are different ecosystems combined on Earth. What about biotic? When we're talking about biotic, we are talking about living things in an ecosystem. This is biotic. Living things in an ecosystem as well as their interactions. All right. Therefore, biotic will need abiotic. That is, biotic is living things, abiotic is non-living. These need each other for survival. All right. All right, we've got abiotic. All these are non-living things in an ecosystem. For example, we've got rocks, we've got water, temperature, wind. These are non-living. They are abiotic, and they influence which type of species can survive, all right, in an area. Let's move on, grade 8. Then we've got communities. When we're talking about communities, these are different populations that interact with each other in the same ecosystem. For example, near the river or near the dam or lake or even a pool, you will find that you will come across different communities. Why is it so? It is because all these different types of animals are drawn together to the water hole because they want to come and drink water in a river. Therefore, you will most likely find a community. And what did we say a community is? It is different types of animals in the same ecosystem. Okay. And then what about ecology? This is the study of interactions between living and their interaction with their physical and chemical environment. That is ecology. And then let's look at competition. What can we say about competition? It is when two species need the same limited resources. They are often in competition with each other, right? That is competition. And then what about symbiosis? It refers to the interaction between species in the same community and over a long period of time. And then habitats. This is the place where organisms live. That's a habitat. All right, let's go to introduction to ecology. What can you say about ecology? Ecology is all about interaction between the living and the non-living. And remember, we said the living is biotic and the non-living is abiotic. And when we're talking about the non-living, we're talking about rocks, we're talking about the wind, we're talking about the water. All right? These are non-living. They are abiotic. And when we're talking about biotic, these are living. These are living things. For example, we're talking about fish. We're talking about different types of animals. These are living things. And then the non-living, that is abiotic, will influence which animals can survive in the area. For example, if the area is icy, there is a lot of ice. Which animals can survive there? Polar bears can survive there. And then when we look at other places like the deserts, which animals animals can survive in the desert? We've got the camels. They can survive in the desert, right? You can see which animals survive in a particular area because of different features. For example, a polar bear, you will see it has got thick fur so that it will protect itself from the cold. And it has short ears, all right? It is built in such a way that it can survive in that environment. And look at the camels, which survive in a desert, which walk on sand. They've got muscles, they've got long legs, right? And then what about the lips? What about the mouth? It is leathery. Why? Because it feeds mainly on thorns. Remember, in a desert, the food is scarce, it is limited. Therefore, the camel, you see it chewing a thorny bush. Why? Because it can survive in that environment. Okay. Animals, plants, bacteria, protists, and fungi make up the living parts. And then the non-living parts are the conditions the organisms need to survive. All right. These are the non-living. That's why we're talking about the rocks. We're talking about the water. All right. And then this includes the amount of light and water, air, and the right temperature and soil. These are abiotic. These are non-living. They are the ones that affect, okay, and which animals can survive in those conditions. And then the interactions are classified into 4 different levels. These are the interactions. They are classified in 4 different levels. We've got the population, community, ecosystem, and the biosphere. All right, when we're looking at population, we're looking at a group of the same species of animals living in an area. All right, for example, we've got the elephants, the cows, all right? Those are different populations, okay? Then communities. When we're talking about communities, these are different populations in the same ecosystem. Remember, we said population is one type of species living in an area. But when we're talking about communities, when we're talking about the communities, these are different populations living in an area. For example, you are going to find the giraffes, the zebras, the lions, the cheetahs in a certain area. And you wonder why. It is because there is a common cause that is drawing them together. It can be a river, it can be a pool, it can be a lake. It is because all these animals want to drink water. That's why you will find a community. All right. When you come across a community, know that there is a common place or a common thing that all these animals want to interact with. And then we've got an ecosystem. We've got different ecosystems, remember. We've got the aquarium, we've got the grasslands, we've got the deserts. All these are different ecosystems. We've got different animals that live in different ecosystems. And then all the ecosystems on Earth, we call those the biosphere. Biosphere is all the ecosystems on Earth. Okay, let's move on to ecosystem. We are going to look at the non-living parts of an ecosystem that influence which living organisms can live there. And then different populations in a community depend on each other for food. Now we are looking at the food chains, all right? Because there are animals, different populations will depend on other animals for food, all right? An ecosystem is made up of living organisms, and we said living organisms, we call those biotic. And then the non-living, these are abiotic, and they influence which animals can survive in different conditions. All right, let's move on. Grade 8. Let's look at this wonderful picture. We've got the frogs, tadpoles, we've got water, we've got trees, we've got water weeds, we've got the sunlight, we've got the snails, we've got quite a number of species that are surviving in this ecosystem, even the fish. Okay, this we can say this is freshwater species because of the species that survive there. All right, remember, we've got freshwater species, we've got seawater species. All right, these are different. Okay, this is a nice picture. Grade 8. Let's look at parts of an ecosystem. Remember, we said biotic factors, these are living things. Let's look at the components. Plants, for example, we've got what? Trees, and then animals, we can say rabbits. Then we've got people, then microorganisms, for example, yeast. All these are biotic. They are living organisms, okay? And then under abiotic, these are non-living. We've got the temperature, we've got the wind, we've got the rainfall, we've got the sunlight. All these are abiotic. All these are non-living. Okay. Do you understand grade 8? All right. If you've got a question, make sure you ask us. And then the number is 079 578 2908. Make sure you text us and ask if you are not understanding the lesson. Okay. We want all of you to understand. All right. When we said abiotic factors, these are non-living things. All these non-living things are going to influence which animals can survive in those ecosystems. We've got the abiotic, which is the wind, the soil, the rainfall, the sunlight, and temperature. All right. Let's look at abiotic. We've got the temperature. What is the temperature? It describes how hot or cold an area is. Okay, temperature describes how hot or cold an area is. And most organisms live at temperatures between 0 degrees and 40 degrees Celsius. And then we've got different animals and different ecosystems. Let's look at all these animals and different ecosystems. Okay, we've got the camels here. In a desert, we've got the penguins. We also have the polar bears. We've got different types of species. Remember, the abiotic will influence which species can survive in them. All right, we've got water species. Then we know they can survive in water. We've got the camels. We know they can survive in a desert, right? We've got the polar bears. Then we know they can survive in very cold conditions. Okay, these are some of the animals. And then let's look at abiotic again. We've got the wind. It is abiotic. Why are we saying it is abiotic? It is because it is non-living. Some plants use wind for pollination and distribution of seeds. Therefore, we can see the use of abiotic factors. These are very useful because now the seeds are being dispersed for pollination. Okay, the wind will aid in the pollination and also in the distribution of seeds. This is very important. Okay, and then let's move on to water. Okay, water is needed by the organisms to survive. All right, water is precious to life. Okay, and then let's look at sunlight. Sunlight is very important. Remember, we said sun is the ultimate source of energy. Trees need sunlight for photosynthesis. All right. Remember, the trees are the producers. The plants are the producers. They make their own food. All right. Therefore, they will need the right conditions to make their food. Okay. They are the producers. And remember, we are the consumers. We depend on plants for food. All right. That's when the food chain starts. When I'm talking about food chain, do you understand what we're talking about? When we're talking about the food chain, remember I've said the plants need sunlight for photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is very good for the plants because they need to produce their own food, and then the food chain will start. Okay, we've got the herbivores which are going to feed on the plants, right? And then the omnivores which are going to feed on the herbivores and the plants as well. And the examples of herbivores, we've got the cows, we've got the goats. These are the herbivores. What about the omnivores? The examples of omnivores, we've got the dogs, the pigs, and the human beings. We are the omnivores. Why? Because we feed on plants and also on meat. All right? And then we've got the carnivores. Carnivores will eat or feed on meat. All right, and we've got different types of carnivores. We've got the predators. When you're talking about the predators, we're talking about those animals which are going to feed on what? On other animals. They hunt for their food. All right, when they hunt for their food, we'll say that the predators hunt for prey. Okay, and then we also have the scavengers. These are the ones that will go and look for leftovers. They'll go and look for dead meat and they feed on it. And then we also have the insectivores. These are animals like chameleons that will feed on what? On insects. All right. Therefore, the sun is the ultimate source of energy. It is very important. And then let's go back to soil. We've got different types of soil, and they are classified as sand. We've got sand soil, loam soil, and clay. And each soil has different properties which influence the kind of plants that can grow in it. All right. And then biotic and abiotic components. Remember what we said about biotic. These are living organisms. And then abiotic, they are non-living things. Okay. The biotic and abiotic components interact with each other. Okay, they interact as a system. Why are we saying they interact as a system? It is because the abiotic will influence which species can survive in that environment. All right, we've got an example of climate and vegetation. Right, we've got biotic and abiotic vectors. Biotic vectors are living things, and while abiotic are non-living. And then we've got the sunlight here. It is labeled abiotic because it is non-living. We've got the bird here. It is biotic because it is a living organism. All right. We also have water. We've got the rocks. We've got the plants. We've got the insects. All right. These are interacting with each other. We've got the non-living and the living. Then they influence each other. All right. Let's move on. Grade 8. We've got activity 1. What is an ecosystem made up of? Give 3 examples each. It carries 8 marks. We'll give you 5 minutes to answer this activity. Right, grade 8. Hope you are done with the activity. What is an ecosystem made up of? Give 3 examples each. All right. When we're looking at biotic, that is the living organisms. And the examples, we've got plants, we've got animals, we've got microorganisms. And what about the abiotic? These are non-living. The abiotic are the non-living. Okay, and then what about the examples? We've got the temperature, we've got the soil, we've got the water, we've got the temperature and the sunlight. These are non-living and these interact together. All right, they influence each other. For example, if it is a very cold area, then they influence which animal species can survive in cold weather. Okay, who got it correct? Who totalized grade 8? That's good. I can see some of you have totalized. That's excellent. And those who didn't totalize, listen very carefully. You will totalize next time. Okay. Our WhatsApp number again is 079 578 82908. 122. Take a picture of your work and send us so that we see what you've done. All right. Let's move on to types of interactions. Species interact with each other in different ways. The interaction of biotic is classified as following. When we're talking about biotic, remember we're talking about the living organisms, all right? We've got competition, we've got feeding, we've got symbiosis, all right? Symbiosis is further classified as parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. And then the types of these, we've got competition when 2 species in an ecosystem need to share a valuable and often limited resource, such as food or water. They will be in competition, all right? And they are in competition with each other because they are competing for a certain thing. They can compete for water, they can even compete for food. All right, let's look at this community. This is a community. Why am I saying it is a community? Grade 8. It is a community because we've got different species, different types of animals in the same ecosystem. They are being drawn together because of this pool. All right, they need water, they need to drink. Therefore, they are a community because in the pool, you can come across a fish, you can come across crocodiles, you can come across different types of frogs, and then you can come across zebras, even giraffes, even the cats, different cats like the lions. All these will come to drink water in this pool. Therefore, we call it a community. Remember, when we're talking about a community, we are talking about different types of populations. These are different types of species. Okay. Are we moving together, grade 8? Good. Let's move together. Let's look at feeding. Different species in an ecosystem interact with one species when one species can use the other as a food source. For example, the predator-prey relationship. When we say predator-prey relationship, do you understand what we're talking about? A predator is a hunter, all right? And then a prey is the hunted. For example, you can see the predator here. It has hunted the prey here. All right. You see our food chain, how it is going. We started with the plants as the producers, and then we said the herbivores will feed on plants, and then when the herbivores feed on plants, the omnivores will feed on plants and on herbivores. And the examples we said, we've got dogs, we've got human beings, we've got pigs. All these are omnivores. And then we've got carnivores. Carnivores feed on meat, all right? And we've got different types of carnivores. We've got predators, which hunt for prey, and then we've got scavengers that look for dead animals, and then we also have insectivores that will feed on other insects. All right, that is about feeding. And then symbiosis, it is when two different species living together in the same community interact with each other over a long period of time. Let's look at parasitism. It is when one species benefits or gains something from the relationship and the other species is harmed in some way. Okay, this is parasitism. For example, we've got different types of insects which are going to feed on the blood of the biotic, the blood of the living. For example, as human beings, you know mosquitoes. Mosquitoes bite us, they suck our blood, therefore they will be harming us. Okay, they can even spread diseases. And then what about mutualism? When we're talking about mutualism, we're talking about the relationship. It occurs between two species where both of the individuals benefit from the interaction. For example, we've got buffaloes. Remember, buffaloes are wild animals. They live in the wild. At times they come across different diseases. They'll be having ticks. And then we've got the birds. Then the birds are going to feed on those ticks, and then the buffalo will benefit because the ticks will be taken away from it, and then the birds will also benefit from the buffalo. Okay, this is mutualism. All right, both parties are benefiting from each other. Is that clear? Good. All right, let's move on. Commensalism. One species benefit while the other is unaffected by the relationship. Okay, one species benefit and the other is not affected at all by the relationship. For example, we've got tree frogs. They use plants as protection. Okay, you can see a frog here. You can see the leaves of plant. Okay, therefore the frog is benefiting from the tree, but the tree is unaffected. It doesn't benefit anything from the frog, and it is not harmed by the frog. Okay, let's look at feeding types. Living organisms need to feed to be able to perform their life processes. Living organisms need to feed to be able to perform other life processes. You still remember the life processes grade 8, don't you? That's good. Organisms are classified into two groups. We've got the producers and the consumers. When we're talking about producers, these produce their own food, right? For example, we've got plants, they produce their own food. And then we've got algae, they produce their own food. These are producers. And then what about the consumers? All animals are consumers, right? It can be a herbivore, it can be an omnivore or a carnivore, but consumers don't make their own food. We depend on the producers. Okay. Organisms that make their own food through photosynthesis. These are called the producers. These are plants. Plants make their own food through photosynthesis. You still remember what photosynthesis are. We will be talking about the sun because the plants need sunlight from the sun and also water from the soil and the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Then the plants will make their own food. They'll produce their own food. And then they attract a food chain because the herbivores don't make their own food, the animals don't make their own food. Therefore, they are going to feed on what? On the producers. They are going to feed on the plants. And then the herbivores are also food for the omnivores and the carnivores. And then the omnivores are going to feed on the plant directly, and the animals. And then the carnivores are going to feed on the animals only. Okay, we've got the carnivores, and within the carnivores, there are categories. We've got different types of carnivores. We've got the scavengers, we've got the predators, and the insectivores. All right. These foods can be used by plants or stored as starch in different parts of the plants for later use. All right. The plants will give us food, okay, in different parts. What do we mean if we say we eat different parts of the plant? For example, we've got the leaves of the plant. We eat it, for example, we've got spinach, and then the stems. We've got celery, and then the roots, it can be potatoes, carrots, parsnips, okay? All these are different types of food in a plant, okay? All right, let's move on. Another word for producer is autotroph, all right? Another word for producer is autotroph, all right? When we are talking about the producer, in this case, look at this picture. We've got the sun here and the plants. The plant will need the sun to make their own food because they are producers, okay? And we call the producers autotrophs, all right? Let's move on. And then we've got the consumers. These are organisms which cannot produce their own food. They need to eat other organisms to get food. All animals are producers and they are called heterotrophs. Okay, they are producers and they are called heterotrophs. Let's look at heterotrophs. Okay, we said heterotrophs are what? Are animals. Okay. And then autotrophs, the plants. Okay, we've got the herbivores, which will feed directly on the plants. For example, we've got cows. They are herbivores, and they feed directly on plants. And then we also have omnivores. These animals will feed on plants and also on other animals, right? We've got the dogs, we've got the pigs, we've got human beings. We eat both the plant and the meat. And then we've got the carnivores. When we're talking about carnivores, we are talking about the animals that feed on meat. All right? We've got different types of carnivores. We've got the predators. For example, we've got the lions. They are the predators. Why are we saying they are predators? Because they hunt for prey, okay? They hunt for other animals for food. And then we've got the scavengers. The scavengers are those animals that feed on meat, but they feed on dead meat. They go looking for dead meat, all right? And then we also have the insectivores. These feed on insects only, like the chameleon. And then we've got the decomposers, grade 8. When we're talking about decomposers are very important in each and every stage of the life cycle. Why is it so? Because decomposers will act on dead animals and decompose them. And they also act on dead trees and decompose them. All right? When they act on them, they decompose them, and then the life cycle goes on, because as they decompose them, there are nutrients that are being released, all right? And then remember, the producers, which are the plants, will need the nutrients for growth, all right? Therefore, let's take, for example, a dead log, okay? When you cut down a tree, and then with time, you will see it decomposing, all right? Until it is finished. And then it is manure, okay? If it is manure, it will release certain nutrients for the plants to survive. Then the other plants are going to get nutrients from that. And even animals, the decomposers act on them. and they break down matter. Let's just take, for example, if we didn't have decomposers, the world would be filled with dead people, dead animals, cut down trees, because they won't decompose. We won't even have space to live because the world will be filled with dead organisms. But the decomposers will act on the logs, they will act on the dead animals and break down matter. All right. And then let's check herbivores. Herbivores are those animals that feed on plants only. Okay. And they feed on leaves, seeds, wood, nectar, pollen, and fruits. Okay. These are different parts of what? Of plants. And herbivores such as cows that feed mainly on grasses, they are called the grazers. They are called the grazers, all right? And there are some herbivores. This is a cow, okay? And there are some herbivores that feed mainly on leaves, like the giraffes, the goats. These are called the browsers. The ones that feed on grass, they are called the grazers. And then we've got those that feed on leaves. They are the browsers. Okay. You can see this nice picture here. We've got the giraffe. It is eating the leaves. It is the browser. All right. And then the omnivores, living things that eat plants and animals. These are omnivores. We've got different types of animals. You can have a look at the picture. We've got quite a number of animals. They feed on both the plants and the animals. We said human beings are omnivores. And we said why? It is because they feed on meat and they also feed on plants. And we feed on different parts of the plant. All right. That's why we've got the fruits. We eat the fruits. For example, the tomato. For example, the oranges. These are fruits. And then we also eat the stems of plants. For example, we've got celery. And then we also eat the leaves. For example, parsley, spinach. Okay, these are the leaves. And then we also eat the what? The roots, which are the potatoes, the carrots. There are quite a number of parts of a plant that we eat. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to carnivores. Let's look at the picture of a predator. What is a predator? Remember, a predator is an animal that hunts for its food. All right. For example, we've got lions, we've got cheetahs, we've got tigers. All these are predators. They hunt for food. They hunt for animals. They hunt for prey. All right. And then let's look. We've got the vultures there. Vultures are what? They are scavengers. Okay. They will feed on dead meat. Animals that feed on dead animals or decaying meat, these are called scavengers. We've got quite a number of these animals. They are called scavengers. And then we also have insectivores. Insectivores, these are animals that feed mainly on insects and other small invertebrates. Okay, let's look at the decomposers. Decomposers are very important. Why am I saying they are important? Because they break down matter. All right. Decomposers break down dead matter into simpler substances which are either eaten or released into the soil. And these include bacteria, fungi, millipedes, bread molds, and some beetles and earthworms. Right? These are the organisms that break or decompose the remains of dead plants and animals in their waste. Okay. And these nutrients can be taken up by the roots of plants. Therefore, nutrients are recycled or They are turned into fertilizers, and then the ecosystem is going to carry on and on. Decomposers are very important because they break down matter. Okay, we've got activity 2. Classify organisms into their respective groups. I'll just give you a minute to classify organisms in their groups. Let's do that. 1 minute. Grade 8, you are done answering these questions. That's very good. Classify organisms into their respective feeding groups. When you classify these, you classify them like this. So we've got the producers, we've got the consumers, and then producers, we've got plants. Plants are producers. Why are we saying plants are producers? It is because they make their own food. They are the producers. Remember photosynthesis: sunlight, carbon dioxide, water, then the plant will produce its own food, all right? And then the consumers are not producers. They don't produce their own food. For example, animals. Animals will depend on the plants for food. We've got different types of consumers. We've got the herbivores, we've got the omnivores, we've got the carnivores. And under carnivores, we've got 3 different types of carnivores. We've got scavengers, predators, and insectivores. All right. And then we've got the most important one, the decomposers. All right. And then let's summarize our lesson. We've got the heterotrophs. And then the heterotrophs, we've got the herbivores that feed directly on plants, and then omnivores that feed on both plants and animals, and then carnivores that feed on meat only, and then the decomposers, they must be there in each life cycle because they decompose, they break down dead matter. It can be a plant or even an animal, right? And they produce nutrients which are being recycled. Okay, let's check for your WhatsApp. All right, grade 8, you didn't send any WhatsApp. Therefore, I hope you've enjoyed the lesson, you've understood. That's very good. Then the homework activity, I'm going to read for you. What are the 4 different levels of interactions between living organisms? Identify and describe the abiotic aspect of the ecosystem. 3, describe the relationship between the biotic factors in the ecosystem. And then in our next lesson, we are going to look at food chains and food webs. All right, that will be the energy flow. Thank you very much. Salam for now.